In this video, I will show you how you can work with a fall off to move and smooth in retopology mode. So I am in the topology viewport. I have a kind of egg shape in the background and some retopology in the foreground. Now, if I want to move these verts around, I could activate the Topology Pen Tool and move around every face or every edge separately, and that can be a bit tedious sometimes. So let's say that I wanted to work with a fall off. Then I could activate the element move tool with the T key, so T for transform, that activates my element move tool. You see that my action center has been set to element and my fall off has been set to element. Now if I close this, now I want to activate my mesh constraints. So in the model tab you have mesh constraints and you can pin it down, and I'm going to set it to background and geometry constraint to point. That's okay. So now when I right click, I have a fall off. So when I move elements or components around, they are moved around with a fall off. And that's all fine and dandy, but I can't actually see my fall off when I'm working. So when I right click, I can see it, but it doesn't give me a visual representation on the mesh itself. To remedy that, you can turn on fall off in your weight maps. So now my fall off is visible, but it may be that it's not visible when you are doing it, because when you go to viewport properties, in active meshes, show weight maps has to be enabled. So when you check show weight maps, now your weight maps will be visible if you also have the fall off weight map selected. So now to pre-visualize my fall off, for instance on that face over here, I could click without click and dragging, because I don't want to move, I just want to check my fall off. If it's too big, I can right click and drag to decrease it, click on the face again, and if that's a good fall off, now I can click and drag. Again, on that vert over here, if that fall off is too small, click and drag with the right mouse button. Now left mouse button, click again to see my fall off, and click and drag. That's how you can move in the topology or in the retopology with a fall off. And of course my element fall off, the mode has been set to auto right now. I can set it of course to polygon or edges or vertices. So if I set it to vertices, now I can only work on vertices, not on polygons, like that. Now, so I'm going to set it back to auto. I can of course also change my fall offs. So by default, the element move tool has been set to element fall off. I could set, for instance, to linear. So when I click and drag now, you see, and I can of course adjust my fall off, so or my shape preset. So I should be able, where is it, to invert it. I can go over here. Linear fall off, oh, reversed, sorry about that. So now it's reversed. And again reversed, and I can set of course my shape presets and all of that. So you can actually change your fall offs. You can set it to cylinder, so then I can right click and drag. Now when I click, I'm only going to affect that, and I can of course adjust the fall off like that. When I click over here, and I have to probably drop the tool, adjust my fall off, press the T key again, and it has gone back to elements. So I should set it to cylinder, drag out. That is something that you could do, and of course I can adjust it just like that, and right click and drag to draw it out again. and right click over here now, and click here. So this is a bit more complicated than just with the element fall off. So right click over here and you can set your fall off and then click on a face or vert or edge. And the further I go to the side, the less it actually gets updated. It moves mostly in the middle. Of course, I can also, and I've dropped my tool, I'm going to press escape a couple of times, press the T key again, so my background constraint on, point is good, and for instance, radial right now, so click and drag, it's actually kind of the same. Well, it's not the same as with cylinder, so if I were to make it bigger and add also retopology on the backside, it would also influence the backside. So now when I click and drag, that part moves. Now when I right click and drag over here, I will draw out my fall off again to reactivate another point that I want to manipulate. Now left click and drag on that. So you can work with different fall offs. So if I right click and drag over here again, draw out my fall off, and I can choose components over here to adjust. If I set it to screen, for instance, haven't tried that out, but anyway, that should work also. So now it's screen fall off. Okay, right click to draw out another screen fall off. Right click to draw this screen fall off. And of course, you always see your fall off with Falloff weight maps checked, but not all the tools do an update of the fall off. So with the screen, the fall off weight map does not get updated, but it's actually visual when you left mouse button click, and when you right mouse button click, I can start a new point to. So if I click right now over here, oh, so with the screen I don't have to right click first, I just can left click, and with the right click I just adjust it. So if it's a bit confusing, when you have, for instance, the cylinder one, I first have to right click and drag, and then I can move over here. But now when I left mouse button click over here, it doesn't work. It actually moves over here. So I have to first right click and drag over here and then move around over here. Because when I left click and drag over here right now without first right clicking dragging, then you see it's on that side that it operates. But with screen, when you choose screen, that's not necessary. You can right click and drag to choose your fall off and simply left click and drag everywhere. So depending on your needs or what you like best to move around, you can change your fall offs with the element move tool. So by default it's been set to elements, so you get this, and then it becomes handy if you turn on fall off, so you can first click and see, oh, it's that fall off. If it's too big, right click and left click again to see your fall off, like I've shown earlier. Let me test some other noise fall off maybe. So now I right clicking, nothing happens. So it actually operates on the whole mesh with different levels. With a, yeah, anyway, you get the idea. In the meantime, you can experiment with these different fall offs. So I have no selection, so let me first make a selection maybe like that. Now press the T key for the element move tool and set it to selection, and let's see what happens. So it's the inside. Anywhere I click, it doesn't matter. It's a selection fall off, so the center actually kind of gets the most influence. So if I make a selection like that, press the T key, set my fall off to selection. Let's see what happens. So anyway, you get the idea. When you use the element move tool, by default it is set to elements. And where is my element? Anyway, if I activate it again, it will be set to elements. By default you will not see the fall off, but you can right click to adjust your fall off. Make sure that your constraint mode is set to background and your geometry constraint is set to point. And when you have your mode set to auto, you can work on faces, edges and vertices. Then if you want to see your fall off, then click the fall off and make sure that in the viewport properties, in active meshes, your show weight maps is enabled. And then when you, and I dropped my tool, so T, adjust the fall off. And actually I said you have to left mouse button click first on a face, but you actually can also right mouse button click without dragging, and then you also see the fall off. So if it's too big, so right mouse button click, if it's too big, then drag, and then click again, click, right mouse button click, drag, and now you have the left, you have the left mouse button click, sorry about that. I don't use it all the time, so it's a bit confusing maybe. So right mouse button click to adjust your fall off, left mouse button click to actually see the fall off. So the fall off weight map only gets updated when you left mouse button click. So right mouse button click to adjust the fall off, left mouse button click to see the actual new fall off. And then you can click and drag, and as shown before, you can change your fall offs, and screen seems to be a fairly good one. And it doesn't work with that fall off, so you can turn it off. Just like that. The next part that I wanted to show you is about smoothing. Smoothing with a fall off. So in the tool tab over here, tools tab of the topology viewport, you have a tool called smooth. And if you hold down the control key, you will see that the smooth tool turns into a smooth brush tool. So first of all, let me select smooth, and I'm going to set iterations for the properties first of all to 1, and make sure that my background constraint is on and geometry constraint is point. And now when I click and drag, and make sure that my fall off is none and that my action center is set to none. So again, iterations to 1, background and point, and now when I click and drag, you see everything gets smoothed out. Nicely constrained to the background. Control Z to undo. I can also set, of course, my iterations, or click and drag to set my iterations, for instance, to 5, because I can go to, for instance, 24, but if I say no, I want, for instance, 10 or 5 like I said. Now let go, and now every time I click, I will get the smoothing with 5 iterations. Just like that. Control Z to undo a couple of times. Now I can also smooth out with a brush, and like I've shown you earlier, when you hold down Control, smooth turns into smooth brush. When I now click, I have a smooth brush, and I could use my pen with my tablet. And again, make sure that your background constraint is on, and your geometry constraint is set to point. Now when I my right pen click and drag, I can drag out my fall off, and you see that your fall off has been set to airbrush right now, and you can see that now you can smooth out interactively for the topology, just like that. So to recap, when you want to smooth out with your background constraint, you could make no selection and set it to smooth, and then maybe first set your iterations back to 1, click and drag, and make sure that your fall off is off. So again, smooth, make sure that your background constraint is on point. Now click and drag, and you smooth out everything. You can also make, of course, a selection. And I'm going to close it. And I'm going to do that again. So like that, control, no, it selects everything anyway. So make a selection, then smooth, and then my iterations back to 1 background. And it's annoying that that gets turned off every time anyway, so click and drag. So now it only operates on that selection, of course. Of course, the same with the smooth brush. So hold down Control, maybe first Control Z to unsmooth, hold down Control, smooth brush, and now with my pen I can, and again background on, point, right click and drag, and smooth out that selection. Just like that. If that selection gets in your way, you can go to your viewport properties, active meshes, and it's invisibility, maybe. Yep, show selections. You can turn that off. So it's still selected, but they are not visible. Show selections back on. And the last thing that I want to show you is, so if you have, for instance, vertices, or a vert or multiple vertices, and I'm going to turn off my background constraint and my fall off vertices that are not on your mesh. So I've dragged one off, then you can simply select it, or you don't even have to select it. You can activate the Topology Pen Tool, and with your background constraint, point background constraint, if you click and drag, then it should nicely be put back on your background. And if you have more than 1 or 2 verts and you don't know which one, you could make a selection and turn on smooth and reset your iterations to, for instance, 1. Make sure that your background constraint is on and point, and then simply click once, and then everything should be on. And I don't think that I had any that were off, so I'm going to turn off my snapping, W, and turn off background constraints, tear some off, so they're not on the surface right now. So if I select these, turn on the smooth tool, background constraint, point, and I don't want 10 iterations, so 1 will do. Simply click, and now everything has been put on the background, and I can click and continue to click and drag to smooth them out. And as shown earlier, I can use the topology pen now to continue moving everything, or with the element move tool, fall off. And if I want to show my fall off, just like I've shown you earlier. So I hope this wasn't all too confusing. So element move tool with background constraint and with fall off weight map checked, and make sure in your active meshes show weight maps is enabled, and you can work with a fall off. And as shown you before, you can change the fall offs, right click and drag, just like that. Hope you find it useful. Bye.